All right. Hey, Mike, Louise, and Greg, and anyone else tuning in on the thread. It's a beautiful moment for me, and it merits a video response. So it's a beautiful moment because um, over nearly 2 decades of being on Facebook, to me, it's been meaningful and brilliant, and I've been building something. And I'm very proud that over that period of time, I've pooled and amassed together the quality, beautiful people in my world, and you guys are people that I love and appreciate. Um, Yet have really clashed with at times, like Greg and Mike. I think I've um um berated you guys with on the differences that have come up on Facebook, but ultimately there's a lot of love from our past, and similarly with Louise. Um, so the fact that you guys are here, coming back after the differences that we've had, it's just uh, this moment captures a lot of what I'm about. So I want to address the topic with a bit of a broader contextualization, and just express how I appreciate so much that we are here talking. The fact that I've built up my Facebook page to be a place of democratic voicing, makes it powerful and a bit of a model, I think, for how I would like my community to operate, and the broader community to go. The context for me saying that is that my setting is one where I want people to be open. I want people to be honest. I want real, in depth discussion and progress to be made. I think of myself in the classroom when I was a teacher. I didn't need to be monitored. People trusted me. They entrusted their students to me, and I taught them with integrity, with honesty and openness. There was no cameras in there. I wasn't being censored. I was trusted. Similarly, in my own home, I don't need to be monitored. I believe I do a good job. I'm not perfect, but I speak my mind. I lead my wife and kids forward, and cameras are not welcome here because this is sacred. It's humanity blossoming based in God, God's creation, His setting in a home, and we have faith, hope, and love at the heart of our home, which is just like a nest for the chicks to blossom in. And so, coming to this topic, I'm contrasting my paradigm of openness, honesty, and transparency with what Facebook has come to be. Because, for the first 10 years, it was beautiful. I wasn't being censored. But now I have shared, like I'm sharing now, I'm doing a video, but I've shared in text my deep, heartfelt, honest, largely scientifically informed views, but not always. But I take my views from a whole spectrum of paradigms and contexts. But what I share here is actually being monitored. Literally, what you're saying, what I'm saying, someone's listening and reading it, and it's going to be judged and censored if it's deemed misinformation or not adequate. So, I raise that as a context for something which you mentioned, Greg. You've said the idea of what's best for the majority. And for anyone tuning in, the topic is I mentioned coronavirus being in Montana. It's been mandated that you cannot discriminate against people by obliging them to take the vaccine. So it's the reverse of where much of the world is going. And Mike has come on, and it was great to see you, Mike, pop up, because I know I've given you a piece of my mind on your wall, and credit to you for taking it and responding and coming back to continue. And this is what it's all about, really, absolutely. So when Mike pipes up and he says, I agree with you, David, that it's not a good thing to mandate vaccines. But you've raised the topic of, in the workplace, what is the obligation of an employer in terms of having a safe workplace? What do they owe their employees, and what's a healthy standard for what they should be expecting of their employees? And you contrast that with personal liberty and freedom. What is the line to find? And it's a good question. Louise, you've piped up and said, lumping the lion's share of the responsibility on the employer is a flawed system, that it should be the personal responsibility ultimately. Something you've thought a lot about. That's great. And Greg, you've chimed in also with a sort of balancing it out and being prepared to take some discomfort on yourself, even when the bigger picture of what is best for the majority is considered. So with this topic, the topic of what is the best for the majority, and the topic of what Facebook may or may not allow me to say here, it makes you think. There's Facebook monitoring what I'm saying. They are literally imposing themselves on this conversation, having a say on what is best for the majority. So there's me standing up with my big audience, 1,500 people plus in my Facebook audience, which I've passionately enjoyed building. Previously, it wasn't being censored. Now I am. I am putting forward a context here where I want to be able to share my honest opinion. And I think it's a good thing, that I think I can help shape my family and community by putting it forward, and by welcoming your opinion, Greg, and your opinion, Mike, and Louise, and we can really nut things out. And then there's Facebook, who's going to come in and give its opinion on what should and shouldn't be allowed. So the question of what's best for the majority is it's laden with layers of context and influence. To take that topic a little bit further, what is best for the majority? Majority, that's a group of people. It's a crowd of some sort. If I say the majority, I might be thinking of the majority of people in my community, or the majority of people in Queensland, or the majority of people in Australia. But the fact is, there's another entity, which is Facebook. What is the majority for Facebook? I think when you said majority, you're thinking the majority of people in Queensland or Australia. But when you've got Facebook in on the conversation, we are dealing with a multinational entity, similar with the UN, with the Gates Foundation, with the pharmaceutical companies, with the mass media endorsed scientific bloc. These entities make the term majority, not just Australia, but the world. And they are having a say on what is best for the majority here. And it's very interesting to think about that, because bringing ideology into the context here, Mike and Greg, you guys are on the left, and I'm certainly more on the right. And Greg, I know you don't like boxing, things like that. But what I'm saying here is that ideology comes into play because there's this focus on, doing things what's right for the majority, or doing things what is right for an individual, and leaning to the right. I definitely have a take on how do you come to what's best for the majority? And in my mind, it's definitely my sense of what's best for the majority comes couched in my ideological framework, which is a Christian framework, which is actually something which all of us, Mike, Louise, Greg, myself, in this particular conversation, we all fall into the context of believing that God is here in this conversation. He's a literal presence. It makes us a little bit conspiracy theorist to any atheist that might be listening in. With that context in mind, what is best for the majority? Well, when you come to the Australian context, or even the multinational context, you've got greed is an influence here. The Australian government is going to decide, or based on its influences, based on its. To me, there's a greedy money trail that needs to be followed. I was thinking, actually, this term greedy money, following the greedy money. I would say that there is a bit of a need to be mindful of the conspiracies that are at work here, because the idea of conspiracy theories could be seen as sort of the science of following the greedy money. Because there are big corporations, elite entities who have a lot of money, and that money is actually having a big say in how and what influences are being brought to Australia. And these corporate entities, to the extent that they're driven by money, are going to say to us, this is what's best for the majority. And the Australian government, will it be making its decision on what's best for the majority based on, true morals? Us in this group believe in God guiding us through true morality. Through that true morality, we can come to a sense of what is best for the majority. Is the Australian government also operating from that perspective? Because you've got the Australian government making declarations of what's best for the majority, but they are influenced by greedy money. That's a bit of a term I'm coming up with here, but what I'm saying is they are influenced by these elites, by these pharmaceuticals, by these international powers who are doing things according to corporate interests. I want to try and link it back a little bit here. What I'm saying here is that to the question of what is best for the majority, the Australian government is making statements and declarations of what's best for the majority. But because of the globalized context, it's not just being influenced by what's best for us, it's being influenced by what's best for the world, because these elite entities have the capacity to have sway over the whole world. So what is best for the majority of Australia is being influenced by what is best for the whole world. And only these elites really are having a capacity to influence what is best for the whole world. And are they being driven by godly Christian morality, or are they being driven to an extent by greedy money? And it comes back to the idea of, what's best into the workplace, Mike, in this way. Because we might say that what's best in the workplace is based on what the Australian government is mandating. And the Australian government has its criteria for how it's going to decide what's best. But ultimately, when you come to the bigger picture, it could be, ScoMo's cabinet deciding what's best. They could be deciding what's best based on what, you know, the global vaccine alliances are saying in terms of health. And they've got their own context. Bill Gates is looking at the whole world and saying what's best for Australia is for everyone to be mandated to be vaccinated, because he can see this bigger picture, that his deep scientific knowledge. But then there's people who are perhaps even more knowledgeable than Gates, and they'll be sort of saying, well, this is what's best for the whole globe in terms of various issues. So it's kind of like bigger and bigger and bigger context, and these people have a contextual view. And I step further out and I think, well, I'm relying on God to give me a sense of what's best for the majority. And so taking to that bigger perspective, ultimately I'm trying to get my sense of morality from God. And that's where I think some people are going wrong. They're getting their sense of what's right from science. They come into questions of morality and trying to get their answer from science. Whereas what I'm saying here is I'm getting my sense of morality from God, from Christianity. And I think, on a slight tangent here, I think it's important for us to be... This is something which I've been really disappointed about in the COVID context. I thought that me and my Christian brothers and sisters would be coming to these topics keen to follow principles, moral principles. We would have our moral principles and we would bring them to the topics. But what I've found is that so often, in so many ways, people are, so lightly discarding their moral principles and trying to find what's the right thing to do based on science. I'm going to be a little bit anti-science in my video here. And if I continue to do, talks like this, if it's podcast, I don't know what I'll do. I think I'm going to bring a slightly anti-science perspective, because what I'm saying is that if we are getting our sense of morality from God, what we need to do is to bring that and be true to that, regardless of what the science brings up. The science will bring up some data, but we bring our moral principles to the science and say, well, okay, well, that's what the data says, but this is what my moral principle says, so I'm going to go with my moral principle regardless of what the implications are. And of course, there's a feedback process here, and we all develop and grow in our morality, but I think that's the process that we ought to follow with our consciences. And so what I'm standing up for here is the idea that in coming to what's best for the majority, we need to start with our moral principles, not discard them too so lightly and easily. And I think that in terms of moral principles, you can't sort of say, oh, well, what's my moral principle? Let me look at the scientific data. Oh, the scientific data, as reported by the mainstream media, is that this is best for everyone. It's the wrong way. I think you need to come to the question of what's best for everyone by first going to your sense of morality, seeking God, praying about it. What is best? What do I truly believe about this idea of conscience? And what I'm so thrilled about is that you've come through and said you don't think it should be mandated. That's coming my way a little bit here, because in my mind, the deep moral principle here is freedom of conscience. And could allowing individuals to have a freedom of conscience here and supporting them in their freedom of conscience actually be the pathway of what's best for the majority? And that's my moral principle here. I think that freedom of conscience ought not to be discarded. That should be the principle that we bring to the science. And as we come to the science, we'll come up with more clarity on the question of what's best for the majority. That's what I think, what I was passionate about on your wall, and what I've really brought with a bit of passion and fire in some of my discussions with Greg is that let's seek God. And to me, in my mind, that was something which we had established in the past, that freedom of conscience is the core of our relationship with God, God with us with each other. That, you know, I love you and I support you to follow what you believe in. And if you don't believe in taking a medication for your own body, then I'm not going to reject you or fear you. I'm going to love you. And somehow I think that actually is the principle that we should bring to the workplace. That my capacity to have a relationship with you is on respect for your belief, respect for your, conscience, what you believe is best for yourself. And all the other topics are going to be built upon that foundation. I think that beyond that, science comes in and can help us understand what's best for lots of people. But science can also come in and build a sense of fear, build a sense of distrust, build a sense of awkwardness. And I just think science can be used in lots of different ways there. But let's start with that foundation. So it's 20 minutes now. I've been talking. I have no idea how many of you have come through to the end of this video response. But I wanted to take this chance to do something new and different for me. I feel like I'm stepping out, I'm stepping forward. And I'm going to summarize a little bit here, because what I'm doing is putting myself forward as a bit of a voice. Maybe I'll do more of this in terms of blogging. And I really want people to come to grips with, you can follow my approach, which is very democratic, which is opening the left, the right, your personal opinion, my personal opinion. Let's come to, and through dialogue, find the common ground and make that common piece of the pie bigger and bigger as we discuss, so that we can move forward and find progress. Or you can vote for Facebook's method and pathway. You can put a bit of, see what I'm doing here as valuable, as opening up discussion. Or you can put a vote in for the policed dialogue of the Facebook world. Because the Facebook world, the Google world, the invasive, monitored paradigm is in direct polar opposite to my approach. My approach is, I'm going to give you my view and opinion. And it's not always going to be based on science. It's going to be based on the fact that I'm a good person. I'm a moral person. I feel a sense of having the capacity to be trusted to teach a classroom of kids without being monitored. I have the capacity to raise my family to be wise and strong. I can do that without being monitored, without being censored. That is the way forward. The other way is this globalized, fact-checked, censored system where they will be deciding what's best for the majority and for you and for your family. So, like I said, I've got a lot of thoughts on these different topics. I've decided to make a video because I'm stepping out to be a little bit of a voice on these topics. And it's also because you guys, especially Greg and Mike, Louise, you're a great input, but I haven't clashed with you like I have with Mike and Greg. I just love that you guys have come back and continued to feed into this conversation. I appreciate it. I love you guys all. I know that there's other people who'll be listening in on this topic. Madonna, I saw you clicked on someone's comment here, and you've been a great encouragement. You're probably another big reason why I'm doing this, because of your very kind words to me yesterday about taking being an important voice. So there's a lot of reasons for this long video. I appreciate anyone who's watched to the end, and let's keep building, let's keep contributing. Be honest, be passionate, be real. You don't always have to be scientifically correct. Say what you think, say what you feel, and then the science and the opinions and the people who agree and the people who disagree are gonna it's gonna be a snowball of goodness. Sometimes this awkwardness, sometimes disagreement, but ultimately moving forward in progress towards appreciative, moral, faith-driven, love, hope-driven community. Peace.